I'm about to take you on a journey that Carl Jung himself begged us not to ignore. A journey not into the outside world, but deep into the neglected, often misunderstood terrain of the human psyche. This isn't a spiritual detour or a philosophical indulgence, it's a psychological necessity. Jung warned us because he saw what happens when we ignore the vital energies within us, the inner masculine and feminine forces that shape our thoughts, emotions, relationships, and even our destiny. If that sounds abstract, it's only because we've been conditioned to misunderstand it. Jung saw a pattern in human suffering. The more we deny these polarities within ourselves, the more we suffer. And not just in some vague way. We find ourselves unfulfilled, disconnected, anxious, angry, or lost, not because life is meaningless, but because we are living only half of it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let me ask you something serious. Have you ever felt like you were simultaneously too much and not enough? Like there's a part of you that's been silenced for so long, you're not even sure it's real anymore. That's not confusion, that's your unconscious trying to wake you up. Jung believed that within every man lives an anima, the unconscious feminine, and within every woman lives an animus, the unconscious masculine. These aren't just poetic ideas. They are powerful, psychological forces that influence how we think, feel, relate, love, and even how we suffer. But here's the twist. Society has taught us to reject them. Men are told to suppress softness, intuition, receptivity. Women are told to hide assertiveness, logic, and strength. And so we split. We amputate essential parts of our soul to fit into roles we didn't choose. The result? We become fragmented, hollow. We chase external validation because internally we feel incomplete. And Jung's warning wasn't just philosophical, it was urgent. Because what you deny in yourself doesn't disappear. It festers in the shadow. It shows up in your relationships, your fears, your compulsions. It becomes the root of projection. You think you're angry at your partner, your boss, or the world, but you're really angry at the part of you that you abandoned. You think you're in love with someone because they complete you, but really you're in love with the forgotten parts of yourself that they reflect back to you. Until you recognize this, you'll keep outsourcing your soul. You'll keep chasing people, roles, and achievements, hoping they'll fill the gap that only your integrated self can fill. The animus and anima are not optional. They are essential. They are the bridge between your conscious mind and the deep, mysterious world of your unconscious. When ignored, they become distorted. The anima may appear in men as mood swings, irrational fears, or emotional chaos. The animus may appear in women as coldness, stubbornness, or a need to dominate. But when integrated, they unlock your full humanity. The anima brings a man sensitivity, creativity, empathy, and emotional depth. The animus brings a woman clarity, strength, logic, and direction. Together, they create inner harmony, not balance in the sense of being neutral or bland, but dynamic wholeness, a capacity to move fluidly between energies, to respond to life with both power and grace. But how do we begin this integration? It starts with brutal honesty. You have to be willing to face the parts of yourself you've disowned. That means looking at your triggers, your projections, your fantasies. It means asking, what do I criticize in others that might actually be a reflection of something I haven't accepted in myself? When we feel intense emotions about someone, whether admiration or hatred, that's often our unconscious trying to get our attention, the person becomes a mirror. If you're a man constantly drawn to emotional, nurturing women, maybe that's your anima calling out to you. If you're a woman who's obsessed with strong, decisive men, maybe that's your animus trying to find expression. Until you recognize this, you'll keep searching for completion externally, and you'll never find peace. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that quote isn't just profound, it's prophetic. Most people are living out scripts they didn't write. They are puppets of their own unconscious, reacting instead of responding, repeating instead of choosing. And the tragedy is, they think that's just who they are. They never realize they have the power to become something more, integrated, whole, fully alive. Integration doesn't mean becoming androgynous. It means becoming fluid, dynamic, multidimensional. It means being able to act with strength and feel with depth, to lead with clarity and love with openness, to be both structure and flow, logic and intuition, warrior and healer. This is the sacred marriage. Jung spoke of the union of opposites within the psyche. And it's not some spiritual fantasy. It's the only path to real psychological maturity. But it's not easy. It requires courage. It requires solitude. It requires going against the grain of everything society tells you. Most people want comfort, not truth. They want approval, not authenticity. But you're not here for comfort. You're here for transformation. And transformation begins when you stop asking, "How can I be accepted?" and start asking, "What part of me have I been too afraid to meet?" Because the part you've been avoiding is the key to your wholeness. You don't need to go live in a cave or read ancient texts to start this journey. You just need to begin listening to your dreams, your intuition, your reactions. You keep a journal. Track your emotions. Notice the patterns. Meditate not to escape, but to listen to the quiet voices beneath the noise. The anima and animus won't shout. They whisper. They appear in dreams, in fantasies, in moments of stillness. They speak in symbols, not words, and the more you listen, the more they reveal. And once you begin this dialogue, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop reacting to life and start responding. You'll stop needing others to complete you and start attracting relationships based on mutual wholeness, not mutual wounds. You'll stop being a slave to your emotions or your logic because you'll know how to hold both. You'll stop living in extremes, either passive or aggressive, dependent or isolated, and start living from a place of integrated power. But don't expect instant results. This is a lifelong process. A dance between light and dark, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. There will be moments of clarity and moments of chaos. But every step you take toward integration is a step toward freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to be who you truly are without fear, without masks, without fragmentation. So I'll leave you with this question. What if the person you've been waiting for to save you is the part of yourself you've been refusing to embrace? What if healing isn't about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you were before you were told which half of your soul to silence? Once we begin to seriously entertain the possibility that who we are is not just one thing, but a tension of opposites, we encounter a radical truth. And growth is not about becoming more of what we already are, but about integrating what we've been avoiding. The masculine and feminine energies within you are not just psychological categories, they are ancient, archetypal forces that, when denied, create imbalance and suffering. But when embraced, they awaken a deep, intuitive intelligence that guides your life with power, depth, and meaning. Let's be honest. Most of us were not taught to look inward. We were taught to perform, to succeed, to fit in. But the soul doesn't care about performance. The soul wants wholeness. And when we ignore that inner call, the unconscious starts to rebel. We start to feel emotional dissonance. We sabotage our relationships. We chase success but feel empty. We collapse into burnout, anxiety, addiction, or depression not because life is meaningless, but because we're living in contradiction with our own nature. We've exiled half of who we are. This is not a new problem. The ancient myths, the spiritual traditions, the dreams of countless generations, they all point to this inner split. The hero's journey, which Jung studied deeply, is not just about slaying dragons or reaching distant lands. It's about descending into the unknown parts of the self, facing the shadow, integrating the masculine and feminine energies, and returning whole. But most people never make that descent. They stay on the surface, afraid of what they might find, afraid that to embrace the opposite energy is to lose themselves. But the truth is, it's only when we stop resisting that we start becoming. Integration is not loss, it is evolution. Think about how this plays out in your life. If you're constantly trying to be in control, to push, to dominate, you may be suppressing the feminine energy of surrender, flow, and emotional receptivity. If you're always trying to please, to yield, to avoid conflict, you may be suppressing the masculine energy of assertion, boundaries, and clarity. Over time, this imbalance creates psychic fatigue. You start to feel like a stranger to yourself. You wonder why relationships don't work, why you feel misunderstood, why you keep repeating the same mistakes. Jung would say, look inward. Find the exiled energy. Reclaim it. But reclaiming isn't easy. It requires inner work. It requires sitting with discomfort. It means allowing the opposite energy to speak. For men, this may look like confronting emotions they've buried for years: grief, vulnerability, fear. For women, it may mean facing anger, ambition, or independence that they've been taught to suppress. This is not about flipping roles, it's about becoming whole. You don't stop being who you are. You become more of who you are by integrating what you've left behind. Jung often spoke of the anima and animus appearing in dreams. The anima would show up in a man's dream as a mysterious woman, sometimes nurturing, sometimes destructive, representing his relationship with his own emotions and intuition. The animus might appear in a woman's dream as a wise old man or a harsh critic, reflecting her inner authority or lack thereof. These dream figures are not random. They are messages from the unconscious, inviting us to evolve. But we have to decode them. We have to be willing to ask, what is this figure trying to show me about myself? This is where active imagination comes in, a Jungian practice of dialoguing with inner figures. You sit with the image or energy of your anima or animus, and you let it speak. You listen. You engage. You don't try to control the experience. You let the psyche reveal itself. And in that process, something magical happens. You begin to see that you are not just your ego. You are a vast, mysterious system of energies, archetypes, and potentials waiting to be realized. But this process isn't just for your own fulfillment. It changes how you show up in the world. When you integrate your inner feminine, you become more emotionally intelligent, more compassionate, more intuitively guided. When you integrate your inner masculine, you become more focused, more decisive, more grounded in action. You stop swinging between extremes. You begin to embody a centered presence, and people feel it. Your relationships change. Your work changes, your creativity deepens. Because now, you're not just operating from half your soul, you're bringing your full self to every moment. But be warned, this journey often brings resistance. Your ego will fight to maintain the status quo. Society will mock or misunderstand you. But you're not here to conform, you're here to awaken. And awakening always comes with a cost, the death of the old self. The self that was limited, fragmented, afraid. That self has to die so that the integrated self can emerge. And that death is not a loss, it's a rebirth. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your true self by integrating the unconscious. It's not about perfection, it's about wholeness. And wholeness includes the light and the dark, the masculine and feminine, the known and the unknown. It's a spiral, not a straight line. You will revisit the same themes, the same wounds, the same questions, but each time with greater awareness, greater compassion, greater power. So what does this look like in daily life? It looks like a man allowing himself to cry without shame, to feel deeply, to listen to his intuition. It looks like a woman asserting herself without guilt, making bold decisions, trusting her logic. It looks like breaking the inherited scripts and writing your own. It looks like creating space for both structure and spontaneity, discipline and softness, clarity and mystery. It looks like being fully human. But integration is not a solo act. It requires relationship. Because it's often in relationship that our inner opposites are activated. The people we love or hate become mirrors. They expose our wounds, our projections, our blind spots. And if we're conscious, we use those moments not to blame, but to grow. Instead of saying, "Why do they make me feel this way?" we ask, "What part of me are they reflecting?" This is the alchemical gold of relationship, not comfort, but transformation. So look at your life. Where are the imbalances? Where are you over-identifying with one energy and neglecting the other? Where are you stuck in patterns that no longer serve you? What part of yourself have you been afraid to listen to? Because here's the truth. There is no outer solution to an inner problem. You can change jobs, partners, cities, but if you don't change the inner landscape, the same patterns will follow you. Integration is the only path to real change. And once you begin this work, you'll start to see the world differently. You'll see beyond roles and labels. You'll recognize the anima and animus in art, in music, in mythology, in the people around you. You'll start to live symbolically, seeing the deeper patterns behind events. But you'll become less reactive and more reflective, less fragmented and more whole. And you'll realize that the greatest adventure is not out there, but in here in the depths of your own psyche. So let me ask you the deepest question of all. What would your life look like if you stopped resisting your wholeness? If you stopped being just a man or a woman, just a thinker or a feeler, just a doer or a dreamer, and allowed yourself to be all of it? What if you stopped living from fear and started living from integration? That's not just a better life, that's a life aligned with your soul. If you've come this far, you're not just curious, you're ready. Ready to step beyond the threshold of surface self-awareness and into the deeper waters where your soul waits to be heard. Because the truth is, most people live their entire lives skimming across the top, avoiding the profound internal reckoning that integration demands. But you're starting to listen. You're beginning to see that the journey into your inner masculine and feminine energies isn't a side quest, it's the central path to becoming who you truly are. By now, you've begun to notice how the absence of integration shows up in your life. You've seen the projections, the patterns, the tension between what you present to the world and what you carry in silence. And maybe, just maybe, you've started to question who's really been in control. Have your decisions been guided by your authentic self, or by the wounded masculine and feminine energies you haven't yet reconciled? Because here's the hard truth: when we ignore our inner polarity, we don't stay neutral, we become ruled by the unconscious. And that unconscious doesn't whisper, it hijacks. It turns your relationships into battlegrounds. It turns your ambition into obsession. It turns your sensitivity into shame. And all the while, you think, this is just how life is. But it's not. It's how life becomes when we stop listening within. Jung warned us not to ignore these energies for a reason. He saw the damage it caused. He saw what happened to people who never met their anima or animus, who never faced the shadow of the opposite within. They became rigid, brittle, shallow. They lost spontaneity. They became caricatures of themselves. The man who only knows dominance becomes tyrannical or emotionally dead. The woman who only knows passivity becomes resentful or manipulative. But when you integrate, you become unpredictable in the best way. You become free. So what does that freedom actually feel like? It's subtle at first. You might notice you don't get as emotionally hijacked. You might notice you stop seeking validation from people who used to trigger you. You might start having dreams that feel more vivid, more symbolic, more alive. Your creativity opens up. Your intuition sharpens. Your decisions feel more aligned. It's not that life becomes easier, it becomes more yours. You're no longer driven by unconscious needs. You're guided by conscious choice. That's the difference between a life lived in reaction and a life lived in truth. But integration also demands that we redefine strength. For too long, we've associated strength with control, with stoicism, with dominance. But real strength is the ability to hold the tension of opposites without collapsing into one side. Real strength is being able to feel deeply and act decisively, to embrace vulnerability without losing direction, to be soft without becoming weak, to be strong without becoming hard. This is the middle path Jung pointed to, not a place of neutrality, but of dynamism, of paradox, of power rooted in wholeness. And it's not just about you. When you integrate, the people around you feel it. Your relationships become less about need and more about resonance. You stop using people to fill your inner gaps. You start loving from fullness, not from emptiness. And that kind of love changes everything. It's magnetic, it's healing. It invites others to do the same. Because when you embody integration, you don't need to preach it. Your presence becomes the teaching. But let's go deeper. There's something else. Jung hinted at something mystical. He believed that integrating the anima and animus wasn't just about psychological health. It was a spiritual act. It was the path to what he called the self, the totality of who you are, beyond ego, beyond persona, beyond the masks you wear. And the self isn't just a balanced version of you, it's the divine within you, the archetype of wholeness, the inner god and goddess. And the union of the masculine and feminine within is the sacred marriage, the hieros germos, the alchemical fusion that births higher consciousness. This is why the process can feel so intense. You're not just changing habits. You're undergoing inner alchemy. You're dissolving the old structures. You're confronting pain that's been passed down through generations. You're healing ancestral wounds. You're reclaiming parts of your psyche that were exiled before you were even born. This is soul work, and it is not for the faint of heart. But the rewards are infinite, because once you touch that wholeness, once you feel the masculine and feminine dancing within you, you understand what it means to be truly alive. You stop striving. You start flowing. You stop performing. You start being. You stop seeking power. You become power. And the world begins to reflect that back to you, not as some magical thinking, but as a natural consequence of inner alignment. So how do we sustain this work? Through ritual, through reflection, through relationship. You make time every day to check in with yourself. You ask, which energy is leading me today? Am I acting out of balance? Am I overcompensating? Am I neglecting a voice within that needs to be heard? You write, you meditate, you observe, you stay awake. And when you fall asleep again, as we all, do you wake yourself gently? You forgive yourself, and you begin again. And most importantly, you stop waiting. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect relationship, the perfect teacher to begin this work. The teacher is already within you. The anima, the animus, they are waiting. They've always been waiting, and they don't demand perfection. They ask only for your presence, your willingness, your honesty, your courage to see what you've ignored. So now I ask you, as directly as possible, what happens if you never answer that call? What happens if you keep living from only half of who you are? If you keep chasing relationships to feel whole, jobs to feel powerful, substances to feel peace? How long can you keep running from yourself before the cost becomes too high? Because the cost is not just personal, it's collective. A world full of unintegrated people is a world full of projection, conflict, violence, confusion. When we don't do our inner work, we export our inner chaos onto others. We judge, we divide, we destroy. But when we heal within, we become agents of peace, of clarity, of change. The world doesn't need more opinions, it needs more integrated souls. So here's the final truth: you are not broken. You are not lacking. You are not too much or too little. You are simply unfinished. And your completion doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. From the sacred union of what you've been and what you've refused to become. And from the embrace of your inner masculine and feminine energies. From the courage to face yourself fully, love yourself fiercely, and live from your wholeness unapologetically. Now ask yourself, with all the honesty and depth you can summon, are you ready to stop ignoring your inner masculine and feminine energy? Are you ready to stop running from yourself and start becoming yourself? Because Jung didn't just leave us with a warning, he left us with a map. And now, the journey is yours. Use it. Honor it. Live it. Fully. Completely. Now.